So at the Soap and Clay family, we have accomplished the what seems to be impossible that we go through every single year, which is we made it through the last birthday of the summer because we are very summer heavy with our birthdays. And now we still have a few weeks left before we start school because we don't do that thing until September. But because of that, you have to start thinking about fall season. And fall season for me means a whole lot of wood grain soaps. And so that is what we will be doing today. And I will tell you more about it in just a minute. But before I do, hello, I am Mrs. Soap and Clay. Let's make stuff. How's it going, Sudsers? Welcome back to the channel. You are at Soap and Clay, where we make all the soapy things, and you are here for week 30 of year 3. And as I said, we are doing a wood grain tutorial technique today, and we are also using this to kick off the new Project Soapway challenge, because that's what the challenge was. It was the wood grain technique. And my bar gets to come first in all the Project Soapway stuff because, I made the challenge and did the thing. So with the first wood grain for my line this year, I decided that I wanted to do something kind of fun and actually incorporate some uncommon colors, because while wood grains are very cool in the natural colors and the way that you would find them in wood, I didn't want to do that because I had a really delicious scent that I got from Cierra Candles, because unlike so many of the scents that have vanilla undertones in them, it doesn't discolor. And so I really wanted to lean into that and play with it. However, I did notice on the website that it does say it will accelerate. And so I really wanted to lean into that acceleration as well within my soap pour and essentially get my batter to an almost emulsion to give me plenty of time to do the wood grain, because as you may or may not know, wood grains, they kind of take a while to pour. So let's get to the video. I will tell you more about the technique of a wood grain, my decisions, and all of the things with Cierra Candles and this particular scent, there. Okay, so wood grain time. So first up, the oils. Now, in this right now, I have my kaolin clay mixed into the total batch of the oils, and I have about 4 tablespoons of kaolin clay. So I understand that making a wood grain for me is always going to be kind of complicated because I do put the kaolin clay in, or clays in general. Therefore, the batch is naturally going to accelerate. And I have another problem in that the Bourbon Tobacco from Cierra Candles is said to accelerate. I have never worked with it in soap form. I absolutely love the scent, and I love that it does not discolor. But when I saw that it accelerated, I got kind of nervous. And so ultimately what I decided to do with this batch was to just mix it to an almost emulsion. So technically, it's not going to stay in a solution unless it continues to be mixed. You know what I mean? And then put the scent in and allow the scent to help out with that acceleration and ensure that it will be at an emulsion, but give me enough time to work with my soap batter. Because even though I am using a whole bunch of slow moving oils, basically my slow moving oils mix is 50% hard oils, so coconut and palm, and 50% soft, so your olives and some castor for an extra bubble and some apricots. Now, if you can see here, it's pretty thin, and so I actually could have stood to let it, I don't know, mix a little bit longer, I suppose, but as you will see moving through with the pour, I really think that it's probably a better idea that I did not, because it got kind of thick at the end of this pour. Now, a wood grain tutorial, it comes in all shapes and sizes, and I have done essentially all shapes and sizes, but for this particular one, what I am going to do is an in the pot pour like a wall pour, and then do another wall pour into the mold itself using these three colors. And so I'm going to layer effectively the colors and the pattern into this empty, container here, and then pour that into the mold. So because of that, it does take kind of a lot of time. And so while this is a very, very light batter right now, like it's very thin, I really did need that extra time. Speaking of not very thin, do you see how thick that fragrance is? Yeah, I was shooketh when I went to go pour that into, the container that I used to mix my pink, by the way. I'm not just dirty for the sake of being dirty, just reusing the same container. Anyway, I was really shooketh when I went to go measure that out because it was so like thick. And so I got really scared immediately. Like, this is not going to go well. It's going to be a complete and total disaster. So I started booking it at that point. None of my lines, my funnel is really where it should be. But the process was basically the same the entire time. I had about 8 ounces of each of the colors separated out, and the rest of the batter was the white. And so in a 50-ounce batch, the majority of it was meant to be white, essentially doing a 4 count with the white and then a 2 count with each of the colors, and then continuing on. But as you can see, very, very thin. So I have very, very muddy colors at the bottom of this container, which I am pretty concerned about. But at this point, I decided might be a good idea to give it a quick mix again, which I did with all of the containers. Ultimately, it didn't really matter because it was going to start accelerating and thickening up pretty good almost immediately anyway. But as you can see, the acceleration did, it got me a thicker batch of soap that does yield, a better fluidity to actually create that really beautiful, faux funnel that I'm going for, so I can pour it into the container. And really, with a wood grain, it's kind of cool that if you can get some more muddy colors or like alternating colors between it, because then when you cut it, it will end up looking more like a natural piece of wood. Obviously, given these colors, I'm not really going for a natural piece of wood because I am using this really pretty pink, which is guava from Mad Micas, and a yellow, which is lemon cupcake or something else that I dislike from Mad Micas and just want gone, just because I want some interesting contrast and really want to play with the fact that I don't have to lean into browns and blacks in totality for a wood grain with this particular scent, because while it does have really nice vanilla undertones, no discoloration. So that was my thinking with all of it. But as you can see, yeah, it can yield kind of a cool bar, right? Because we've got the really thin stuff that's sort of being pushed to one side of the container here, and then we have the thicker stuff that's setting up there. And yeah, I don't know. This got me actually pretty nervous. It was my first wood grain of the year, and I was feeling some kind of way about this and just convinced that it was not going to go well. But let's go check out this pour and see how I fare. Okay, and now onto the pour of this. So I have successfully put a faux funnel into my container and my long pour spout, and I am just going to go back and forth along the wall with the mold itself set up on an angle. So I just use, just a towel to prop it up, and I'm just going to go back and forth and continue on until everything is in the mold. Now, as you can see, it's a really cool, like snake-like type pattern that's going in there right now. It's very beautiful. It's ribboning nicely. But as the right-hand side of that container, you can also see very, very muddy colors. So it will be interesting to see what this ends up doing overall. Now, once I have about a third of the batter into the mold is when I then start to put in my little knots. And so just a knot is just exactly what I'm doing there, just kind of going back and forth a little bit and then continuing on my course. With that, though, just doing that, you can see just how much that changed the overall look and the look of the batter itself in that particular area. It almost muddied it out a little bit too much because I'm getting to the bottom of this container where there is the lighter, batter and the thinner batter. And so, yeah, I don't know that this is really the move. I don't think it's the look. I think I could have probably handled taking it a little bit, closer to an emulsion with all of this. But ultimately, every soap is going to be gorgeous. It's all going to work out. And then, yeah, there we have just whole sections of white and yellow, and nothing's really standing up on its own, or with it's becoming messy. But I still have another round of this because as you can see, there's only about half of the batter in the mold right now. So I have to do another faux funnel into the container to finish off the rest of this soap. And so it's not a bad thing that the beginning of it ended up really light, because by the time I got everything into the, container to pour the second round of this, see how thick it is. So again, within a wood grain, this can be a very cool thing because you have different essentially thickness of your lines within the actual pattern, which is really indicative of natural wood. And so within a real colored, the proper colors for wood, this would look actually pretty stunning. But I don't know, it also ended up getting a little bit thick. So generally I would not recommend using a fragrance that is known to accelerate for something like this, just because the consistency of the batter is so critical. That said, you can make a wood grain, you can make soap batter do almost whatever you want. And so this is pretty indicative of precisely that. And it's going to ultimately still turn out and still look like a wood grain soap, even though the batter is overly thick and not exactly what I wanted. But if you have not done a lot of experience, if you don't have a lot of experience with wood grains, I definitely would recommend not using a fragrance that is known to accelerate. I was just so excited to play with this. I knew I wanted it into my fall line because this Bourbon and Tobacco is just chef's kiss. I will also be putting in the Tom Ford Tobacco and Vanille into my fall line. So I was very excited to work with it and ultimately didn't care that it was going to accelerate. And really, I wanted to see how much I could play with it. And so this is just going to be me skewering the top however I feel like skewering the top. And whenever I have a skewer in my hand, I cannot stop. So you get to watch me not stop, because it's not just this. I just keep going with it over and over and over again. Now this will be C-popped, it will be gelled. I'm going to put it on a heat pad right away because I did not hit an emulsion before I started pouring. I do want to ensure that I give this soap its best chance, and that means lots of heat to ensure that, saponification actually occurs, and I end up with a batch of soap that is actually soap and no real problems with any sort of, separation or all of the jazz. So it will be C-popped, it will be gelled, and we get to watch it because, now, because that's how these videos work, but not until I continue just messing with this soap batter over and over and over again. Like I said, I get a skewer in my hand, I can't stop. You cannot stop me. And ultimately this particular piece of it, it all gets planed off. So why I'm doing it is an unknown. But you know what? It was cathartic. I enjoyed it. Now let's go check out this cut and see what we are working with inside of this batch of soap for the wood grain. And onto the cut, and first things first, I took it out of the mold way too soon. I was so excited. I definitely wanted to cut it right away, but also I was on a time crunch. The side of this, very, very beautiful. I love this very much, except for all of the little pock marks that you see because I took it out of aforementioned mold too quickly. If you are somebody like me that cannot wait to take things out of the mold, I recommend putting that mold into the freezer for 10 to 15 minutes so it will release easier and you will not get any of those bubbles. But because I know that this is the type of soap that I will absolutely bevel and plane around the entirety of the bar to ensure that that wood pattern is released, I'm kind of fine with it being, kind of rough on the edges because I know they're coming off. But that is not to say that I am not fine with it being rough around the edges when the ends do not come off, because really I don't tend to care. Now, if you look at this, so I've chunked this into 3 different pieces, right, to cut it into what will ultimately be 9 pieces. And this is what it would look like if you were doing the standard, just slice down from the top of the mold, from the top of the soap. That is not what we are doing, though. We are chunking this out, and then we are going to cut it essentially from, side to side, giving us 3 different soaps and releasing that pattern really beautifully. Now, if you want more information on how to cut soaps in all these different ways in order to release a pattern, I recommend going and checking out a video I did on the Bro Code, which was a form of a wood grain tutorial back in year 1. I did that and then cut it into 3 different ways so you can see 3 different ways that the pattern can be released. in the same batch of soap that essentially was this same pour. So a wood grain slash thin lines pour. Now that's not bad. I'm actually not mad at it. Yes, it is muddy in some places, but because it has that better definition closer to the top, I'm not mad at it. I did also use two colors within this that I knew were going to potentially lighten up, and they weren't going to be as bright and as beautiful as what they were within, their original form, because guava lava super kind of isn't meant to be a good pink, but I just wanted to get rid of it. I don't want it hanging out in my shelves anymore, and I almost never use it. And the yellow, again, it's one of those yellows that always confuses me with Mad Micas. I think it does weird discoloration things. For that, I mean, what that is, that looks like it could be, an actual bar or, piece of wood, in that, parts of it are muddy and parts of it have more definition within, your knots and whatnot. And that side, absolutely gorgeous. And once it gets a nice bevel around all of the edges, as well as a plane around all of the flat portions, it's going to look absolutely stunning. Same thing with that. That totally works. If that didn't have pink and yellow in it, I mean, you keep the yellow, turn the pink into a brown, it would absolutely look like a gorgeous actual piece of, wood, and what this whole pour is intended to be. So that's perfect. I really do enjoy that for sure. This soap itself, it is way too soft for me to actually bevel right now and get really clean, beautiful lines. See there with the pink going too thick, and you've got that's interesting. It's not really knot-esque, but that's okay. It's a bar of soap that smells beautiful and looks beautiful, and it's all the things. And, when you are doing challenges like this, obviously you are really focusing on getting one really beautiful bar of soap to submit, and that one would probably be the one that I would submit. I like that one quite a lot. It looks very cute for sure. But with all of the wood grain tutorials and techniques, like I said, this is one way to do it. I also have done it. I don't know if I've done a video on it, but essentially doing a faux funnel in the mold, but you use a square mold, a slab mold instead, and then you split it different in order to release the pattern. But that's another way as well. I think I've done it. If not, I'll do it in the next couple days so you can see it. But for now, that's my wood grain for the Project Soapway, submission, and it's super cute, and the smell is absolutely amazing. And there it is, my wood grain soap. And yeah, it's absolutely gorgeous. It's definitely super soft right now, but as soon as it's, firm enough to actually bevel, this is the type of soap that I'm absolutely going to bevel all of the sides, so you can really get that beautiful wood grain around the entire bar. The fragrance itself, really interesting. I love the scent, and I was really surprised at how thick it is. Very thick consistency for a fragrance oil. I've never really seen that before, and I was kind of concerned about it, doing very strange things in my soap batter, because it's kind of a bad idea to use a fragrance for the first time in a more complicated design. But as you can see, I had no problems. That's not to say you won't have problems if you try to do this within a more complicated design, though. I've just been doing this for a really long time. Getting it to an almost emulsion, I think, was a great idea for this, because I knew the acceleration was going to be a factor. So I let the acceleration essentially speed up that saponification. And as you can see with the final bars, none problems whatsoever. We had no weeping. We didn't even have any sort of signs of soda ash or anything on it. No signs of a lye heavy bar or a bar of soap that had not been properly mixed. The colors themselves, super pretty. I think I did end up pouring a little bit too thin in the beginning stages, so we did get more muddying colors than I would like. But all in all, really cool bar. I love it. It's a great way to start my fall line with this beautiful, wood grain soap. And so I hope you liked it too. If you are interested in the rest of the Project Soapway, wood grains, so the 3 winners, definitely subscribe and like and do all the things. That would be great. For the sudsers, hey, you know what this means. The next 3 days, they're going to be Project Soapway winners. And so we're going to be exclusively celebrating our fellow soap makers, our fellow sudsers that did the thing, they leaned into a challenge, they submitted their work, and now we get to showcase them and celebrate them. So definitely stick around for that. Sudsers in general, thank you for existing, for being you. For everybody who joins the Project Soapway challenges, thank you for doing that. You guys are all awesome. I mean it. And I am going to go because I have 1,001 things to do in my attempt to squeeze all of the awesome into the final weeks of summer, before the kiddos go back to school. But I will see you tomorrow for another round of Woodgrain Project Soapway. Soapy fun. Bye.